Well, welcome everyone. Please do use the chat feature to send any questions, and I am happy to monitor that for Josh. With that, I will hand it over to Josh Cooperman.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Erica. Mikel, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled that you're here. Here's what we're doing today. So this is the Showroom presented by Walker Zanger, and we're having a chat about design and TV and not being able to say no and so many other things. My list for you is so long, and I'm really looking forward to this. My name is Josh Cooperman. I'm the host and publisher of Convo By Design, a podcast for the design and architecture space. And if you like the conversation you hear today, and I hope that you do, it will be rebroadcast as a podcast on Convo By Design. So you will be aware of that. So you can always keep track of the podcast. And if you subscribe, you'll get it automatically. Mikel Welch, thank you so much for joining us today. I like we were talking about, I love doing this. I would love it more if we were in the same room so that we could laugh louder, but we'll take this until we can get it. How are you today?
I'm doing good, just taking it all in, trying to enjoy these last few days of what I call summer-ish weather. So I've been great.
Summer-ish, I'll take that. Couple of things I was really excited to talk to you about. And the first thing I want to lead into is pretty much one of the last things we talked about when you and I last spoke. And that is your work as a set decorator. Okay. I have spoken to set decorators before. And one of the most unique and interesting things about that particular side of the business, and by the way, not every set decorator is a designer and not every designer is a set decorator. But the one thing that set decorators have in their repertoire is they walk the tightrope without a net. You can't say no.
No is not an option. Like, that's the one thing I kind of wish everyone knew about television. Like, literally when they say the show must go on, the show is going to go on whether you're ready or not. So like we were kind of talking the other day, I always like how people always say, like, have a plan A, have a plan B. No, in television, you need a plan E and F and G and so on, because the show will go on. And when they say, action, time is literally money. And so that's taught me a lot just in design in general, even just like working with clients and always just being prepared. So yes, it's drastically different.
And here's why I bring it up, because in my conversations with set decorators who I've spoken to for years, and I have a deep admiration for that business, because there is, we can always in our regular lives, we can always say no, but no, and maybe later, maybe you ghost someone and you don't pick up the phone. When you are in an industry where you cannot say no, where it has to happen, and it's tantamount to real design anyway, you have to make it happen. I'm curious how that's changed your approach as an interior designer.
You know what, as an interior designer, what that has really taught me is the art of being prepared and to consistently find myself in a place where I'm anticipating things that could potentially go wrong. Like, what happens if, this beautiful fabric that we've now ordered because I couldn't physically go into a showroom, and I'm trusting my vendor, like, what if it doesn't come off, exactly how I planned? I just have to think about things differently and like how I'm going to word that to the client. And as we all know, for those who are designers, a lot of what we do is psychology, right? And it's the wordplay, and it's how you spin it and how you problem solve. And so I think that background in set design has really set me up for that. Also in set design, what most people don't know is I don't get to just make anything that I want to make. There are typically 8 chiefs. You're going to have the executive producer, the co-executive producer, and all of these producers, all 8 people want to keep their job. So they all want job security. So all 8 have to give you some type of critique. So you're always trying to make this team of people happy, as opposed to with a client, it's just a husband and a wife. So it kind of just prepares you to always have a backup plan and to be able to smooth things over. And I just really think that that's helped me out tremendously.
I'm curious.
Yes.
So in scripted,
Yes.
set decorators, you know, in movies and TV, there's this fantastic thing that set decorators have, where
Okay.
it is your set. So when you dress the set, when you decorate that set, it is your set, and it's not open until you say it's open. That's in scripted. I'm curious though, in reality, specifically home and design reality, do you still have that opportunity, or is it moving so fast that it's just kind of like fluid?
No, it's never fluid. Literally, we are like painting things at the last second. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, put the picture frame on the wall because we need to cover up, that piece of paint that just didn't dry properly, or, so it's like always at the last second. It's like, don't touch it, just look at it. No, it's never really your set. And so as much as I would love to tell you that, with the Property Brothers and Fixer Upper and all those shows, we are all plagued with the same thing. We're up against these tight deadlines. And so, we try to make the best design solutions, but a lot of times, like, it's not your set. Honestly, the set belongs to time. And so time is really dictating what you have the capacity to do. So nothing it's ever really, really mine per se. I just get to put my stamp on it.
Yeah, right. And I love that. One of the things that is yours is when you get back to designing for clients.
Yes.
or even for a show house. Have you ever done a design house?
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
I love a show house. I've done 4 now.
Okay, so actually, you know what? Brooklyn.
Yes.
Is that that's the one?
Mm-hmm.
And
so, yes.
Go ahead, tell me about that.
Okay, so that was so much fun. And so for those who are listening, I love designer show houses, and I partnered with Walker Zanger for the Brooklyn Heights designer show house. And I'm going to tell on myself because I'm really big about just being transparent. So this was my 4th show house that I got to do, and it's with Tony Manning. And he did like the Hampton designer show house, and I've done like 2 of those. So I'm like, okay, Tony's gonna look out for me. I'm gonna get the best room in the house. And he's like, so Mikel, you have the lower level. And I'm like, the basement? I don't want the basement. And so I'm like being like mini diva over here, like having this moment, but it ended up being the best thing that could have ever happened. I had a space that was basically the entertainment room, and it ended up being a lower level with a fireplace. I had a mini I had a wet bar, and that's where I got to work with Walker Zanger and just like totally outfit that space. Put brand new tile up. I even had a custom Walker Zanger marble that I used for the countertop. And the room ended up being the one place where we had so much traffic coming in because I had an actual bar. And so every event was hosted in that space. So consequently, all of the press would come to my room and we would take photos. So it ended up being the best thing that could have ever happened. I like to say that photo broke the design internet because it got posted by like Studio McGee and Amber Interiors and Emily Henderson and all these big names. And then I got a call from, or I should say I got a direct message from Joanna Gaines herself off of that one room. So that just goes to show you those show houses, you never know what's going to come from it.
I want to get back to the show house in a second, but I'm curious.
Yes.
That is one of the things like I have found in design houses, showcase houses in particular. It feels to me like the smaller, weirder, stranger room you have, the more attention you're going to get.
That is true because you have a trickier set of parameters that you have to work around. And I think people kind of applaud that weird space when they walk through it. It was just like, I don't know how I would have pulled that off, or I could never have pulled that off. And so I do think, as opposed to like a standard bathroom or living room or bedroom, it is drastically different. And so I do think you get that applause. It's a little bit louder. That thunder is much louder when you take on a risky space.
Has it changed the way you look? Because let's be honest, we all have that weird, strange, what is this room? What is its purpose? Why is it here? We all have that in our house in some place, unless it's a perfectly designed home. Has this changed the manner in which you think about that odd space in the home?
Yes. I think odd spaces honestly allow interior designers an opportunity to really flex your design muscle. Because let's be honest, like, that same little 14 by 14 box that we all have, we've got that down to a science. And I think when you have those odd spaces, that's what really challenges you and makes you a designer. Because again, anybody can go to Home Goods and like whirl around and, get lucky with the perfect room. But when you have like odd dimensions and, like for instance, even just in that home in general, the home that we made over was from like the 1800s. And back then those measurements were just not, the best. And so even things that were like, I will never forget my sofa, we were trying to get to come down the staircase. The staircase was wide at the top and it got narrow as we begin to get to the end of the staircase. So I ended up having to switch my sofa because we measured the top of the stairs, but not the bottom. And I'm like, I didn't even think that we need to measure down the entire staircase, but it just wasn't a standard size. But again, most designers would have probably freaked out. They would have cried. They would have lost their mind. It's 2 days before the show house. And I've already got like 3 sofas, that I'm ready. It wasn't my favorite sofa, but I'm like, you know what? Plan D will work. And so that's what you have to make it work. And you have to, oftentimes I will also say, I feel like mistakes are my greatest mistakes are the ones that turned out to be the most beneficial projects for me. And they always turn out to be the best.
You know what? I could not possibly agree with you more. It's so funny. Listen, the podcast, Convo by Design, the reason I do the podcast is because I was producing my first ever design house in Hollywood, small space, big style. And with a background in broadcast, I didn't record any of it. None of the stories, none of the parties, none of the events. I didn't record anything. And I was left at the end of this thing with no content. And I felt like an idiot. And I said, and it was like, you know what? I want to make sure that this failure never happens again. And right. I found, but it's the same thing. To your point, that's exactly right. I was thinking of something else too. When you're dealing with this, and that is the set decorator in you, right? That's like, okay, well, I've got an entry point that's this size and an exit point that's that size. Can't you kind of see like the trades working at a time when the rules are a little looser, and maybe they started the stairway early in the morning when everyone was fresh, and after a few beers or something, at the end of the day, you wind up with a narrower staircase.
Yeah, I mean, I think we totally had those same issues and those same hiccups. Mistakes happen, and a lot of times, I can think about a project that I had. I worked on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, and I was designing a 5,000 square foot basement, and my contractors didn't pitch the shower properly. And it was one of those things when I walked in the next day, we're like, wait a minute, hold on. How is the water going to drain? And so it was one of those things we had to correct immediately. But I think we're all plagued with those same things. And it's really about how you problem solve before you have to bring the client into the equation. Because hopefully, just like me, hopefully I can catch something before my director catches it. Then it's not an issue. Everybody knows on set, like I talk a lot. And if I'm not talking, then they know, okay, wait a minute, something's not right. Like you're trying to handle something. But I mean, the bottom line is as long as it gets done, I think that's the bottom line. Like with clients, I pride myself on always having an answer. And again, that's that set design background where I'm always kind of thinking ahead. And as long as you have an answer for the client, I feel like, they feel more confident in you as a designer. because you're giving them solutions and not excuses. Nobody
You
wants
know,
excuses.
you know what? You are 100% right. And I think that that's the thing. You talked about psychology,
Yes.
and psychology is absolutely true. The one thing, and I think maybe that's it. Maybe I've never really made that connection before. And I think you just nailed it. The connection between the skill set of a set decorator and the skill set of an interior designer, and how the two merge back and forth really well, is in communication. Like, have you ever been in a situation where something was wrong and then they have to find out by the client or director, where they have to find out by themselves? They're always going to be mad. If you go to them and say, hey, mistake was made, I got it,
Yes.
we're going to fix it, it's never a problem.
It's a much easier problem to
Okay.
to handle. And I've always been taught, like, just kind of, get ahead of the ball. The last thing you want is that ball rolling you over. And so if you can, step in and offer those solutions up front, I think that's important, especially like with Walker Zanger. You understand, like, making sure that my numbers are right when I'm doing those tile estimations. And sometimes my contractor, I'm not a tile estimator. I'm going off of what my project manager has told me. And oftentimes, it can be off. And, trying to prevent that in the beginning and buffering that extra 15 to 20% and getting the client to understand why we do that. So, a lot of it is just, like you said, that problem solving.
Yeah. And I think at one point, what I'd like to do is, Erica, maybe we can find out what Mikel specified for that project. Do you know offhand? I'm not sure that you do, but if you don't, maybe we can also post some images, because it's very cool.
It was our 6th Avenue chevron, and we have posted those images on our social media today.
Oh, fantastic. So they can go right now and find out. What is the handle?
At Walker Zanger.
Perfect.
We kept it simple.
All right, good. So, because I think it's such a great look, and I love that. Something else that I wanted to talk to you about with regard to your design, and you are one of these designers that goes by aesthetic and look and feel, not by cost. So it doesn't have to be expensive, and I think it's an extraordinary skill to have, because I mean, anyone can spend an infinite amount of money and make something absolutely amazing. The
Right.
artistry comes in the blend and the edit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, going back to, like, with television, everybody thinks we have these like huge budgets, and we really don't. And so what that has really taught me how to do is to stretch things. I live in this weird world, which typically doesn't work, where either you're a high-end designer or you're a television designer. And that's kind of what I was taught in the beginning. And I'm one of those people who buck the system and say, no, you can't tell me that. So in doing so, I have to always do my due diligence in making sure that I protect my design. Like, if I'm going to if the room is sponsored by IKEA, I have to use IKEA, but I need to be able to mix that with some Walker Zanger tile in the back and, some Scala Madre fabric. I need to be able to weave those worlds together, or else I'll just lose my credibility, in the high-end world. So I think it's just a matter of, like, learning how to make those worlds kind of collide. And that is something that I've worked really hard to do, because it's not easy. But it's important. Design doesn't have to be super expensive. And like I always tell my high-end friends, because we get into some debates, the woman who is looking for a high-end design does not want her kitchen outfitted at IKEA. Like, she's just not the same woman. And so they are different worlds in a sense. But what I enjoy is being able to take pieces and elements of that high-end design, and to help that woman who is survived breast cancer, and now we're giving her a brand new makeover. So my television design, I love those projects because it's typically we're walking into a situation where it's a deserving family, something has happened, something traumatic has happened, and they don't care if you gave them a $200 gift cards to Ross. They're just happy that you gave them something. And so I appreciate both sides of that the spectrum, just like I love my high-end clients because they're the ones who pay attention to detail. They want to know the history behind the pieces, and they're excited about the thread counts and etc. So they're different worlds, but you just have to kind of make them merge when you can.
And it's funny because I'm imagining you with one of your high-end clients where it's not sliding it in, but if something looks good, it looks good, right? So if you find something from IKEA, but it fits with the look and feel, you're still throwing it in there. And I guess that always comes down to what looks good in your eye. And I feel like, I'm curious if you agree, that high-end design attitudes have become a little bit more tolerant and open to maybe that high-low mix.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the high-low mix is a thing across the board. And who doesn't like a high-low mix? Even my high-end clients, they're like, yes, we have the budget to spend, but they don't want me to splurge on everything. It's like, let's use the Walker Zanger tile. However, can we go somewhere local and maybe have, the cabinetry outfitted, from our local dealer around the corner? So I think everybody likes that kind of high-end low across the board. If we were all to ask ourselves right now, like, would we want to go all high-end? Maybe not. Like, let's give me a balance of both. But I think it's that option, it's having that option. And speaking of option, the set designer in me hated the fact that my jacket was shiny. So I don't know if you guys saw me, I was mouthing to wardrobe, AKA my friend over there, to give me a new jacket. And see, it's always about having a plan B. So now I don't have to have that TV, in TV we call it moire when the fabric moves, and this was moving too much for me. So now we're back.
And by the way, thank you for pulling off the first wardrobe change during the showroom. It has never been done before, and I guarantee you it will never be done as smoothly. That was amazing.
Well, thank you.
Switching gears a little bit, I was reading your blog, and I like your blog, and I like your approach to things. And one of the things in particular was, I have a pet peeve, and I have a few, but one of them is color of the year.
Okay.
I get it. I get it, but people don't design every year for a different color.
Yeah.
But it's inspiration.
Yes.
I totally get it. One of the things that you had was your best year-round paint colors.
Yes.
I like that design approach. I like the approach that says, hey, listen, in order to be cool, you don't have to have this one color, but here are some options that will always be popular, that you can always know that you're going to be safe with. Have you always sort of approached color that way, or is that a relatively new idea for you?
Honestly, and you're going to get me in so much trouble today, Josh. As you're asking me that question, a brand that I won't mention announced their color of the year, and I'm supposed to talk about that later. So between the 80 of us in the room today, I will say I appreciate the color of the year because it makes us kind of like, as designers, focus on something and to try to like find a way to make it work. As someone who works with clients on an everyday basis, I can't necessarily force them to choose one particular color. So I prefer to have a couple of colors that are kind of like my brand colors, if you will. And I feel like these are within my wheelhouse, and these are the colors that I think would work for my clients over a span of time. And so that's what I would prefer to do. I think having the color of the year is great, but what if I don't like turquoise? Well, then what do I do? Like, do I tap out until next year? So no, I don't want anybody to feel like, there's one color that they just have to stick to. So I try to work with a palette.
If I'm not a coral fan, I'm just going with white until Millennium Pink is done.
You gotta wait till 2023. It's just not your year. Sorry.
Yeah, and again, I think what I think it is. I think it's a pet peeve because I would prefer that first of all, I think this is the year of color. I don't think that any color of the year defines where we are in any way right now. But I do think that if there are colors of the year, it should be designer led. I think the design community should define, hey, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're working with, here's what we're being told. And speaking of that, one of the things that I love most about paint is the naming. You know, I was looking at your list. If I could have another job, it would be that of a paint namer.
Really? That would stress me out.
Oh, are you kidding? So I was looking at your list. You have Faro and Balls, Mole's Breath.
Oh, love that color. Hands down.
It's amazing.
That is a winner. Like, the name is aggressive, but I'm telling you, that color, like that gray color, can I tell you a quick funny story? Sorry to cut you off. So that Mole's Breath color, I told you I love a show house. So when I did the Hampton Designer Show House, I painted the walls in Mole's Breath. Jamie Drake, who is like the godfather of design, walks into my room and he taps me and he's like, listen, this is one of my favorites. And I'm going to tell you that because he said, I don't even like neutral colors, but he said, that's one of the main reasons why I can say that, you did a knockout job with this. So Mole's Breath, if you put that on the wall, Jamie Drake will love it.
And I love it. It's amazing. It's rich and it's a strong, rich color.
Yes.
Bear had their elephant skin,
mm-hmm.
which again, it's that rich gray, which I think,
yes.
But again, very cool name. My favorite though,
yes,
was Faro and Balls Off Black.
Yes. Oh, I just love a rich, moody color. I as you can see, like my house, I have white walls, but I love a moody color. It's something about a moody tone that just really sets the vibe right in a space for me. And I kind of like that like, it's not exactly a dark black. It's kind of like an off black. Like
an off black.
Yeah, it's soothing.
Well, and that's the thing, I think, because, in so many conversations about small spaces in particular and use of dark colors, which has been really popular for the last few years. And I think designers, I feel like design television has given designers permission to explore and to try new things.
Absolutely. And I think, as designers, a lot of times that's our job, is to empower other people, to give them permission. Because when I talk to so many clients, they don't realize what they can do in their own homes, and they're waiting for somebody to give them permission to do something. And it's so interesting because typically it's like these CEOs of these companies, they run these Fortune 500 companies, but they need somebody to tell them that it's okay to take down that non-load bearing wall. Like, why did you need my permission to do that? Like, but they wait because they don't know what to do. And thank God they don't, because then that, keeps some cash flow in our pockets. But they don't know. And so it's our job to kind of educate them and to empower. And again, it's going back to that psychology. I feel like design psychology should be like that. That's a whole like course in itself. But it's really us, empowering these clients to let them know that, hey, it's all right. You can do it.
There is no easy way for this segue. So I'm just throwing it in.
Go for it. I changed my jacket. So I think everything is like fair game at this point.
We started talking last time about your new show, and I am so intrigued, freaked out, and just utterly curious about Murder House Flip.
Oh gosh. Okay. So let me give some context before everybody starts logging off. So in television, a lot of times it's kind of like when you apply for a new job or with a new client, you don't know what you're going to walk into. So my agent called me and I got a call to do a new show on a new network called Quibi, which is a new phone app. And when they called me, I'm like, I love a design show. Tell me about it. And it was called Murder House Flip. And I'm like, this is like satire. Like, is this Saturday Night Live, like a skit? What is this? But it was real. Honestly, what my show is myself and my host, Joelle. We go into homes where iconic murders happen. And they happen like prior to like the early 90s when we could have gone online to Google and to find out what happened in these homes. And so unless you were on microfiche looking, like you just didn't know what happened. So these people buy these homes, and then your neighbor rings the doorbell and they're like, hey, so you bought the Johnson house. And you're like, well, what is the Johnson house? And that's when you find out. So we're helping these people who are like, it's traumatic. Like they didn't know what happened. Well, most didn't. Some knew. Like, I mean, honestly, if you're in a $1 million neighborhood and they're selling the house for $400,000, something happened. So, you know, we do have those type of scenarios, but we're just trying to go in and help them, you know, change their mindset, change the space. And it's scary to me still to this day.
Well, talking about scary, you said the word microfiche, which I think maybe 5 of us on this call have any idea what that actually is. But in any case, it is interesting, and it's a little, it freaks me out a little bit.
Me too.
And I'm curious, how many homes have you done now?
Okay, so on Quibi, our platform is broken up where each episode is like 5 minutes. And so our houses, we did 4 houses for the pilot season. And each episode, like I said, is like less than 10 minutes. So we did 4 houses total. We just got green lit for season 2. So we'll have a couple of more houses coming up very soon.
What's the strangest thing you saw?
The strangest thing that I actually saw, I don't know if you want me to tell you that. I think the weirdest thing is that we pulled up some tile. It wasn't Walker Zanger tile, so don't be afraid of that. But we pulled up some tile, and when we pulled up tile in the bathroom, there was some dry bodily fluid that we like there. When we clean the space, there's a special solution that we have to apply, and it like it's almost like a hydrogen peroxide, and it foams up when it's in contact with blood. And so we did find it.
You know, it's funny to me though. You're like, I don't know if I should tell you this. It's like that's kind of what I expected.
No, it's true. I mean, I won't. What I really wanted to say is when we went into a space where a man like killed his wife in the bathtub. Like it's graphic, it's gory. And I'm plagued with going in there and ripping all of these things out of the space, because what we have to do is make it look completely different. Because again, going back to design psychology, when you walk back into that space that you can no longer sell, I need to make it look drastically different. So I need to tear down walls. I need to tear out a lot of things, because when you walk back into this space after all these cameras leave, I really need you to feel good about being in the space. And so that was probably one of the worst things that we saw. It made it a little too real.
I get it. Well, it's interesting too, because, and again, this is a hard segue, but you think about homes that are used hard and somewhat abused. I got news for you. When we finally do come out of this COVID pandemic, you're going to have some homes that have been used hard and abused. I think most, and by the way, I'm curious as to your thoughts on this, but I feel like 21 is going to be an absolutely groundbreaking year for design and architecture.
Oh, I think so too. I mean, I think a lot of things are just going to change. You know, just thinking about now and how much we use like abrasive cleaners. I think the way that fabric manufacturers and even Walker Zanger, I think when you guys think about your tiles and, you know, the dye lots and whatnot, I think that's going to restructure differently, because it's going to have to, because now we're just constantly clean. Like everything is being sanitized. So I think we're going to look at that completely different. You know, who knows what's to come next. But I even think with design, when we start to begin to like now, like in New York, we're about to start opening up restaurants. We still have to be socially distanced. I think we're going to see like more communal spaces that are now going to become singular type of situations. So instead of walking into hotel lobbies where you see like sofas, I think we are going to see more singular club chairs, and just how we have to navigate that space differently. I'm sure like people who are into techie products, the techie world is going to go crazy, because I think now every single hotel room that you walk into is going to have some type of smart technology where we're going to be able to either talk or call something out so that we don't have to touch anything. And so I do think the design industry is in for a major shift very soon.
Curious how that's affected the way that you run and operate your business from a tech standpoint. Are you looking more actively? Are you working more tech into your residential design, and also how you're approaching the samples and your library? Is your library getting bigger? Is it changing out more rapidly? How are you getting new samples? How are you specifying and researching new product?
Okay, so with the samples in the beginning, I would say May, June, July, like in the early months, I was relying heavily on my vendors. So I might have to call my Walker Zanger rep and say, hey, like, since I can't physically come in and you're not physically at your showroom and you have these samples, with you, could you pair it up to my Sherwin-Williams paint? And we were kind of like matching things that way, the same with fabric. Now that things have opened up, I mean, yes, it's not 100% back to normal, but my sample library in the beginning, like I said, it was a lot of me just trusting my vendors, which I appreciated. But I think now things are going to open up because now I've had to have more conversations with vendors that I typically would have just come in and handled myself. And so I'm excited because it's kind of forced us to go back to the old school way of having to trust and rely on our vendors. And I think that's what our industry is really missing. I think we've gotten, like, technology can be good for some things, but I think we almost gotten to a place where it's like no one wants any type of contact or interaction. It's just like, email it to me, zip it to me. And it's like, it's been nice to actually sit down with the tradesperson and let them do more than just execute a PO. Like, they're really there to facilitate a need. And I appreciate us going back to that kind of like archaic system, if you will. But I think it was necessary and it was needed. So my sample library is growing, and I'm also glad that with having these conversations, my vendors know what to specifically look for, and they can send me things that speak to me as opposed to just sending me this random package of like, the new florals. And I'm like, I don't even use florals in my design. So now they can like be a little more specific and targeted in their approach. And so, so my sample library is beginning to widen, but it's also more specific.
It's interesting too, because we were on this downward trend where designers and architects were in the process of shrinking their internal libraries because everything was available via digital opportunity or some outlet.
Ugh,
and then
not the same.
It's not, right?
Not the same. Oh my gosh. And there's nothing more disappointing than, trying to take your fabric swatch and line it up to the computer. And then when you get it, it's just like, this is not what I asked for. And it's just not the same. And it's like, that's something with that plan A, B, C, and D. Sometimes you can't get around that. And, when you've really sold something like on your mood board and the client is loving that visual representation and then it falls flat, like, it's hard to recover from that, especially like now when, now we can, run to the mart and we can, swap fabrics out. But before, like, no, when COVID first started, it was kind of like, no, you need someone there who you can trust,
From what you've seen on the residential side, what are you being asked to do now? What are your clients asking of you that maybe they weren't asking for at the start of this year?
Oh, I think that's easy. The two things that I'm getting requests for, most importantly, are spaces for my clients to have some type of workout facility area in their home. And then the other thing I'm getting is, how do you help me not make my dining room / kitchen, like, help us, because it's become a classroom. And so now everyone wants like a dedicated space and they don't all have the room for it. So it's just like, okay, how do we convert the basement, or how do we convert, this special area in our home so that the family can make sense of the space? And so most of mine has all been like, how do we make that living and work balance happen in the house with everybody now being at home.
Wow, it is all about the slash, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
With that, I think come some other challenges and some other things that we haven't really considered in the past. I think noise abatement. I guarantee you, everyone in the country now knows whose dogs bark during the day.
Oh,
They
yeah.
know when the trash man comes. You know
Yeah.
when your neighbor's lawn is being mowed. You know if
Yeah.
they've got a blower or I mean,
Yes,
we know everything.
yes, we know everything.
We probably know more about our neighbors during the day than we wanted to.
Yes.
And you know, because of that, there are, you know, noise abatement, air quality,
Mhm.
um, light and limitation of light, and, you know, sort of how to approach all of these things, which I feel like you've definitely got the tech side of it
Yeah.
from a bandwidth standpoint. And you put a family of four on a network where everyone's working,
Oh,
going to
good luck
school,
with that.
right? So on the tech side, one of the biggest struggles that I've seen many designers have, and I don't see it with you, um, is how you balance tech and design.
Well, I think you have to approach them at the same time. Like it can't be an afterthought. I think the two have to work together. And I think it's about honesty. Like I'm not a tech guru. And so that's when I rely on my vendors to like help me make sense. Like I have this beautiful dining table. I somehow need to like the husband wants to work, you know, from this table, but at the same time, you know, the wife doesn't want to see all these cords dangling. It's just like, how do we aesthetically make this work and not make it look like, you know, some super corporate, you know, dining table? So again, you know, it's me having conversations, and I'm always the first person to tell like my team what I don't feel comfortable with and what I want their input in. And I think it's about being honest, because as a designer, I don't have the answer to everything. And that's why I rely on my team to say, hey, help me think about this differently. And I just hired two new designers, and I'm 40 years old. And so they're a little bit younger because I need some millennials to like teach me some things. And so I think it's really just about being honest with yourself and your capacity. And if you don't know something, ask instead of just assuming.
Speaking of asking, we got some questions from the group, and there's Julianne asked, and I love this one. This is really interesting. Have you ever had your design friends critique your set designs? I know my friends wait for me to make comments about the sets in movies and TV.
All the time. I have one friend who I will not call out, but I constantly have to do these like look for less. And so I had to make this Mitchell Gold Bob Williams like furry little chair, and I had to do my DIY version from it. And my friend sent me like a message on my phone and was like, no, no, no. And so I do get both, I do get critique. But it's fine. I don't expect my friends who do high-end design to understand that world, but they also don't understand that, you know, I may have been given this project 48 hours ago. And so I need to get it done. It's off in a back corner, and I'm selling a look on television. So, you know, some things I can get away with. Like you can't feel an 800 thread count or a 1200 thread count sheet quality on television. So I can go to, I don't know, the Dollar Tree or Walmart. No one will ever know. It'll just look like a white sheet. So, you know, I have to learn when to let those things go. But oh, my friends, they'll come for me.
They will at the same time. And to your point, these are two completely different industries.
Yes, they are.
And I think that that's the important thing to really recognize is that, you know, TV is one thing, reality is another. Here's another one. Teresa sent through a ton of really good questions. I'm going to ask a couple of them. I'm going to combine this one because I think it's interesting. How do you keep your designs new and fresh, and where do you find your inspiration?
For me, Instagram, that's my biggest source of inspiration. I feel like my design style is always evolving. For the longest time, I've been into like this whole like primitive modern design aesthetic, which I feel like is me at the core. But I'm learning to like now, one thing, I'm a person who always worked in neutrals, and now I'm beginning to introduce new color into my spaces. And I think for me, it's just about playing around. And stepping outside of my box. I never want to get pigeonholed so far, because I think a lot of times designers fall into a rut where even I've been looking like Joanna Gaines, who has been like shiplap, shiplap, shiplap. She's she's been trademarked for that, but she's not a one-trick pony. So I've begun to look at her work. She's like slowly gone away from that, and it's now kind of changing and evolving. And I think as designers, we all have to do that, because let's face it, after 10 years, a design style becomes kind of passe unless it is something iconic like mid-century modern per se. It just becomes passe. So I think we all are constantly plagued with how we reinvent ourselves. And I think for me, it's just, looking at other designers' work and just seeing what works and is authentic with my design aesthetic. I never want to be something else, but I'm constantly evolving and changing. And it's just honestly studying Instagram and seeing, what works. I mean, because everything isn't going to work. Like I remember a couple of years ago, like, it was this big movement with like millennial pink and like these big like abstract designs that look like Saved by the Bell. Okay, well, that doesn't work for me, but not to say that won't work for someone else. I think it's knowing your lane and staying in it. But it's okay when you're driving on the freeway. If you're in the fast lane, you can get in the middle for a second and see what's going on in that slow lane and that fast lane for a second, and you see where you want to be.
Those are such great points. And by the way, Jay, yes, there are some images. If you go to Walker Zanger on Instagram, you can see some there, and we'll post more. Mikel, those are really great points. I have this theory. I tell the story quite often, and I may have told you. So if I tell the same stories over, I can't help it. When I started doing the podcast, I would ask designers, I would say, so what's your style? It's not a stupid question. You're laughing. It's not a stupid question. It's a pedestrian question. Yes, right? It's like, that's so rudimentary. It's just so basic. It's such a basic question to ask. It took me a while to understand that designers, really accomplished, talented designers, it's not that they have a style. To your point, you can do mid-century modern, you could do traditional, you could do Spanish revival, you could do whatever you want to do, but you will have a fingerprint. You will have that fingerprint, which is woven, some through lines. You will have some things that are woven into the design itself, where someone who's got a keen eye, who knows your work, will walk in and say, oh, Mikel did this room. I can tell because of this or that or the other thing. So I think that that's really important. And back to your point, you should, as an artist, as a creative, you should always have the ability and the desire to learn new things and to try new things, even if they fail spectacularly, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, as designers, we're risk takers. We're not there to play it safe, or you could have went to Home Goods on your own and done it. So I think we're there to push those limits and those boundaries. And I do agree. Yes, there is always going to be, some level of synergy between each one of your designs, even as a designer when you don't think so. Because I've tried, some different design aesthetics, and my friends will come back to me and say, oh, I knew that was yours. And I'm like, well, how did you know? I'm like, I changed it up. And they're like, well, you did. But, I saw a couple of things. Like, I love horses and like all of my designs. Don't ask me why it was not. I didn't even think about it. I just see a horse. I'm like, oh, that's cute. But I never even, like, when I looked at like 7 of my projects, I'm like, oh my gosh, I always have a horse. I don't even like horses. But I found myself like putting horses like throughout my designs. And so it just, there's always going to be, like you said, there's something there.
I'm curious though, when you notice that, do you then go back and fight yourself? Do you say, okay, well, I can't put any horses in the next 5 designs, or do you recognize that it's something that works for you and you go with it?
No, I just let it work. I try not to overthink it. And my last design, I didn't use a horse, so I was proud of myself. But no, I try not to overthink it. Like, I mean, if it works, it works. But I never want to get to a place where it's like, oh my gosh, my brand, my brand, my brand. Like that's too much. And I think if I get to that point where it's like my brand, like I've lost the essence of what design is, and I'm not really being authentic. Then at that point, it just becomes a me show. And I don't ever want to get to that point where it's more about me trying to infuse something so that I can call brand rights. So I try not to look at it like that.
And you know what? That is actually a great segue into the last question for you, and it comes from Jenny. So Jenny, thank you very much. Jenny actually wanted to know something, and I'm curious about this
Jenny
as well.
Nichols?
It is.
I've been excited to talk to Jenny because I don't know if you guys saw, Jenny had like a beautiful yoga mat. I thought you were going to give me some yoga, Jenny, but I'm ready to answer your question. I know exactly who Jenny is.
And it's a good one too. And it kind of fits into your idea of the brand.
Okay.
Her question was, can you talk a little bit about your approach to designing one or two homes in a residence versus the entire house, so that ever popular refresh, where you still have your brand as a designer. You don't necessarily want to come in with an overlay, or you don't want to come on top of what somebody else is doing. In a design house, you'll have your room. You're still subject to what everyone else is doing around you. In a refresh or a one or two room, you're still subject to that. What's your approach there?
I think with that, when I walk into a situation where I'm just designing like a couple of rooms in a house, that is an opportunity. That's when the salesperson in me picks up, because now I need to show out in these two rooms. And honestly, and this is going to sound bad, I try, unless my client, okay, here's the thing. I assess the space first. Sometimes I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, well, honey, you need more than just these two rooms done. So that's an opportunity. So in that case, I'm going to go over the top, because I want these two rooms to stick out like a sore thumb. So when we get finished, you're like, this is just not going to work with the rest of the house. We've got to change it. Now, and it happens every single time, especially with new clients. They don't know if they want to, exactly hand their checkbook over to you completely yet. So they're like, let's test the living room. And then that starts going well. And then, they get comfortable. But honestly, I feel like that's an opportunity. Unless the home is like nicely decorated and it's really these two rooms just need a little zhuzhing. But if I look around that house and I see something's not right, I'm pouncing on it.
I'm just curious, why do you think that's a bad thing? Designers should be sellers. You're overwhelm them with design. You are an artisan. You're a craftsman. This is your trade. Why is it a bad thing to say, hey, I'm going over the top? Then you're going to have to either fix it or
no,
do the whole house.
It's not a bad thing. I really think it's an education. I'd rather use the word education. It's my job to educate the client and to teach them what the home has the potential to be. I never want to go in and just say, oh my gosh, we need to stick it to these people and get their pocketbooks, take all the rooms. It's really just about the education and how, you can show the client, like, what, the rest of your home has the same potential.
Do you shoot every project you do?
No.
Go ahead.
Well, what was your question?
No, do you shoot every project you do? And the ones you do, is there a reason why you do or don't?
Yes. Okay, let me backtrack on that. Yes, I shoot 95% of my projects. Sometimes I won't shoot a project if aesthetically it doesn't fit my design aesthetic. Like yesterday, I just flew back from Chicago, and as you can see from I'm a very rustic kind of clean guy. This client wants this place to look like something out of like El Decor, and they wanted like this Miami penthouse, like white lacquer. It's not my design aesthetic, so I won't put it in my portfolio, but not to say another magazine won't take it. So I do take it and I bank the photos for when the time is right, but I won't put it on my Instagram just because I don't want to put that out as my brand. A check is a check. Sometimes designers have to eat, especially in COVID days.
That is so true. That is so true. And that is the perfect note to end this on, is that everyone's got to eat, even designers, even during COVID days. Mikel, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, this will be, if you want to hear it again, it will be a podcast episode on Convo by Design. This has been the Showroom presented by Walker Zanger. Walker Zanger, thank you so much. Erica, thank you. You guys are the best partners around, and it's awesome. You're greatly appreciated. And thanks, everybody, for taking the time to join us today. We know that your time is valuable. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.